Morgan Williams, 32, stared at her phone, tears blurring the screen as she reread her sister's text. "I'm sorry, but you can't be in my bridal party. It's about the look I'm going for, and you just don't fit it." 10 years later, Morgan sat across from that same sister at their parents' anniversary dinner watching Amber's perfect life unravel in real time. And the strangest part, Morgan didn't feel an ounce of satisfaction, only the heavy weight of a family secret she'd been keeping that was about to change everything. Hey, everyone! Before I dive deeper into what might be the most dramatic family story you'll hear this month, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If this family drama preview already has you hooked, please hit that like button and subscribe, because trust me, you'll want to see how karma eventually caught up to my picture-perfect sister. Family loyalty can be complicated, and I'm about to show you just how messy it can get. Growing up in suburban Boston, I always knew my place in the Williams family hierarchy. Amber was the golden child, beautiful, charming, and seemingly effortless in everything she attempted. 3 years older than me, she cast a long shadow that I could never quite escape. Our parents, Richard and Elaine, successful real estate developers, beamed with pride at Amber's accomplishments, while my achievements often went unnoticed. It wasn't that I was unloved. Mom would assure me with a distracted pat on the shoulder while reviewing Amber's college applications. Dad would nod approvingly when I brought home straight A's, then immediately ask if I'd seen Amber's latest modeling portfolio. I existed in the peripheral vision of my family, always slightly out of focus. The physical differences between us only amplified our roles. Amber inherited Mom's statuesque build, naturally blonde hair, and symmetrical features, the kind that turned heads at the mall and garnered her a substantial Instagram following before social media influencing was even a recognized career path. I, on the other hand, took after my grandmother, shorter with unruly brown hair that refused to be tamed and the kind of face that wasn't ugly but wasn't memorable either. Practical was how my mother diplomatically described my appearance. By the time I reached high school, I'd accepted my position as Amber's less impressive sister. I found my own path, excelling in academics and developing a passion for photography and digital design. While Amber was being crowned homecoming queen, I was winning state science fairs. While she dated the quarterback, I buried myself in projects and built genuine friendships with people who saw beyond appearances. College was my escape. I chose UCLA, as far from Boston as I could reasonably go without leaving the country. For the first time, I wasn't Amber Williams' little sister. I was just Morgan, the talented design student with a sharp eye for detail and a dry sense of humor that actually made people laugh. I bloomed in California, finding confidence in my abilities and even dating occasionally, though nothing serious developed. Meanwhile, Amber continued her charmed life trajectory. She graduated from Boston University with a business degree largely earned through group projects where others did the heavy lifting. She secured a position at a prestigious marketing firm through Dad's connections. She dated a series of increasingly successful men, each one more polished and ambitious than the last. We drifted apart during those years, our communications limited to obligatory holiday gatherings and the occasional family video call. I told myself I was too busy building my career in digital marketing to maintain the one-sided relationship with my sister. The truth was, every interaction with Amber left me feeling smaller, less accomplished, less worthy emotions I'd worked hard to leave behind in Massachusetts. Then came the email that would reignite all those dormant insecurities. Amber was getting married to James Sutton, heir to the Sutton Hotel Group, and Boston's most eligible bachelor, according to Boston Magazine. The wedding would be featured in several high-profile publications. The guest list included state senators, CEOs, and even a minor British royal. It was to be the social event of the season, orchestrated by the most exclusive wedding planner on the East Coast. I wasn't surprised by any of this. It was exactly the kind of spectacle Amber would orchestrate. What did surprise me was my reaction to the carefully worded request to attend as a cherished guest rather than participate as a bridesmaid. Despite our distance, despite everything, I had assumed that when this moment came, blood would trump aesthetics. I was wrong. It's nothing personal, Amber explained, during our subsequent phone call, her voice carrying that familiar tone of practiced sympathy that never quite reached her eyes when we were growing up. The wedding party has a very specific look we're going for. The dresses simply wouldn't flatter your body type. You understand, right? It's my special day. I said I understood. I congratulated her again. I promised to book my flight soon. And then I hung up and cried for 3 straight hours, not because I particularly wanted to be a bridesmaid in Amber's wedding, but because after all these years, after all my personal growth and professional success, I was still the inadequate little sister who didn't quite measure up. The rejection stung with a particular intensity I hadn't felt since adolescence. But as I sat in my stylish Los Angeles apartment, surrounded by awards for my design work and photos of the genuine friends I'd made, something shifted. For the first time, I didn't just feel hurt by Amber's casual cruelty, I felt angry. And beneath that anger was a realization that would change everything. I didn't need Amber's approval anymore. I hadn't for a long time. I decided then that I would attend the wedding. Not as the shamefaced little sister, grateful for whatever scraps of inclusion were thrown her way, but as the successful, confident woman I had become. Amber wanted a look, I would give her one she'd never forget. 8 months later, I landed in Boston for Amber's wedding weekend. I'd invested in a custom-designed dress that played to my strengths, a deep emerald that complemented my complexion, and a cut that flattered my curves while exuding understated elegance. My portfolio had recently won a major industry award, boosting my client list and income substantially. I'd even started dating Michael, a kind and brilliant software engineer who really saw me, and loved what he saw. The rehearsal dinner was held at the Suttons Private Club overlooking Boston Harbor. As I entered, I felt a momentary flutter of those old insecurities, but they dissipated when several guests recognized me from my recent feature in Design Quarterly. I was no longer just Amber's plain sister, I had my own identity, my own accomplishments. Amber's bridesmaids were exactly what I'd expected, 5 women who could have been her clones, all tall, blonde, and thin, wearing identical blush-colored dresses that probably cost more than my monthly rent. They clustered around her like perfectly coordinated satellites, their practiced laughs creating a symphony of artificial delight. Morgan Amber air-kissed both my cheeks when she finally acknowledged my presence. "You actually look presentable." Her eyes widened slightly as she took in my appearance, a flicker of something surprised concern crossing her features before her practiced smile returned. "Congratulations, Amber. James seems wonderful." I meant it. From our brief interaction, her fiancé seemed genuinely kind, if somewhat bewildered by the extravagance surrounding him. "He is. His family's hotel in the Maldives is where we're honeymooning." She gestured vaguely toward him as he chatted with our parents. "Did Mom tell you they're giving us one of their vacation properties as a wedding gift, the lake house in Vermont?" The lake house where I'd spent countless summers exploring while Amber complained about mosquitoes and limited cell service. Another reminder of the uneven distribution of family resources and attention. "That's generous," I managed maintaining my smile. The evening progressed predictably. Toasts celebrated Amber's perfection and the couple's inevitable happiness. Our father spoke at length about his pride in Amber's accomplishments, mentioning me only as our other daughter who came all the way from California. I caught my mother's apologetic glance, but chose to focus on the excellent food instead of the familiar sting. The wedding day arrived with picture-perfect weather, because of course, even the elements cooperated with Amber's plans. The ceremony was held in the rose garden of the Sutton family estate, a breathtaking setting made more impressive by thousands of imported flowers arranged to create a fragrant living cathedral. I sat in the 5th row, the designated spot for immediate family who weren't quite important enough for the front. As Amber floated down the aisle in a custom Vera Wang creation, tears of genuine emotion filled my eyes, not for the spectacle, but for the memory of 2 little girls who had once promised to be each other's maids of honor while playing with bedsheet veils. The reception was a showcase of excess crystal chandeliers suspended from a clear marquee, a 10-piece orchestra, champagne fountains, and a 7-tier cake that required its own security detail. I danced, I chatted with distant relatives who marveled at how I'd finally come into my own, and I avoided the bitter taste of resentment that threatened to surface each time someone expressed surprise at my success. Then came the moment that would ignite the chain of events leading to the family's unraveling. During a rare quiet moment, I found myself alone at the bar with James's younger brother Alex. Unlike the other Sutton men who were polished to an almost reflective shine, Alex had an approachable warmth and an easy smile that suggested he found the whole affair slightly ridiculous. "You must be the famous Morgan," he said, sliding onto the stool beside me. "James mentioned you're the creative one in the family." "I don't know about famous," I laughed, "but yes, I'm the less decorative Williams sister." I'd argue with that assessment. His eyes held mine a moment longer than was strictly polite. "I saw your work in that tech campaign last month. Impressive stuff." We talked for nearly an hour about design, about his work in sustainable architecture, about growing up in the shadow of golden siblings. It was the most genuine conversation I'd had all weekend. "You should see the looks we're getting." Alex chuckled, nodding toward Amber, who was watching us with barely concealed disapproval. "She's probably worried I'll fail to maintain the aesthetic standards of her perfect day." The words slipped out before I could censor them. Alex's eyebrow raised. "Ah, so that's why you're not in that lineup of Stepford bridesmaids," I wondered. The dam broke. Perhaps it was the champagne, perhaps it was finding a kindred spirit, but I told him everything: the text message, the lifetime of being second best, the casual cruelty masked as concern. "That's beyond shitty," he said when I finished. "For what it's worth, I think she made a massive mistake. Those bridesmaids are forgettable. You're not." He scribbled his number on a napkin just as Amber materialized beside us, her smile tight. "Morgan, there you are. Daddy's looking for you for family photos." She cast a disapproving glance at Alex. "Not monopolizing my sister, are you, Alex?" "Just getting to know the most interesting person at this wedding," he replied, with an easy smile that didn't reach his eyes. As I walked away, I heard Amber hiss, "She's not your type, trust me." Little did I know that this conversation would be the first domino in a sequence that would eventually expose the cracks in Amber's perfect façade. The carefully curated image she'd spent a lifetime constructing was about to face its greatest threat, and surprisingly, it wouldn't come from me or my newfound confidence. It would come from within her own perfect new family. I returned to Los Angeles with Alex's number and a strange sense of lightness. Something had shifted during that weekend, not just in how I saw myself in relation to Amber, but in how I saw our entire family dynamic. The patterns were so obvious from a distance: my parents' enabling of Amber's entitlement, my own complicity in accepting the role of lesser sister. The collective fiction we'd all maintained that Amber's superficial successes were somehow more valuable than substance. Alex and I began texting regularly. Our conversations evolved from commiserating about our siblings to sharing professional challenges, then personal hopes and inside jokes. When he mentioned coming to LA for a sustainable architecture conference, my immediate offer to show him around didn't feel forced or calculated, it felt natural. Meanwhile, Amber's picture-perfect social media honeymoon unfolded like a luxury travel advertisement. Every post was meticulously staged, Amber, in flowing resort wear against turquoise Maldivian waters, sunset dinners on private beaches, spontaneous-looking laughter that I knew had probably taken 20 attempts to capture. I double-tapped each image dutifully, but found myself increasingly unmoved by the curated perfection. My mother called weekly, as was her habit. These calls had always followed a predictable pattern: brief inquiries about my life, followed by extended updates on Amber's latest achievements. But something had changed after the wedding. "Your dress was lovely, Morgan," she said during one call, her voice carrying an unusual hesitancy. "I should have said so at the time." "Thanks, Mom." "And that young man you were talking with, James's brother, he seemed quite taken with you." I nearly dropped my phone. In 32 years, my mother had never expressed interest in my romantic prospects beyond vague concerns that my standards might be too high. "Alex is just a friend," I said automatically, though the daily text suggested otherwise. "Well, he seems nice. Different from the rest of that family." She paused. "Morgan, about the bridesmaid situation. I want you to know that your father and I thought it was wrong of Amber." The admission hung between us, unprecedented and uncomfortable. My mother had never openly criticized Amber before. "Did you tell her that?" I asked. We tried in our way. But you know how she gets." I did know. Amber's tears had always been the Williams family's kryptonite, instantly transforming any criticism of her into a collective effort to restore her happiness. "It's fine, Mom." Ancient history now, but it wasn't fine, and we both knew it. That conversation marked the beginning of a subtle realignment in our family, small at first, like the initial tremors before a major earthquake. When Alex came to LA the following month, our friendly tour of the city quickly evolved into something more. By his third night in town, we were kissing on my balcony overlooking the city lights. By the time he left, we had made plans for me to visit Boston. "I should warn you," he said at the airport, "James and Amber have us all over for dinner every Sunday. It's a new tradition she's instituted, the perfect hostess in her perfect new home." "I can handle Amber," I assured him, surprised to realize I meant it. What I couldn't handle was what I discovered during that visit to Boston 2 weeks later. The Sunday dinner at Amber and James's newly renovated Beacon Hill townhouse was exactly the performance I'd expected: Amber playing domestic goddess in a spotless designer kitchen that showed no signs of actual cooking, James dutifully praising her minimal culinary efforts, his parents nodding approvingly at their son's picture-perfect life. "Morgan, Alex didn't mention you were coming to town," Amber said when we arrived together, her smile brittle. "I would have set another place." "Last-minute decision," Alex replied smoothly. "We can share a plate." The subtle claiming in his statement wasn't lost on anyone, least of all Amber, whose eyes narrowed fractionally before she recovered. "How resourceful. Like your little apartment in Los Angeles, Morgan." Alex mentioned how creatively you've maximized that small space. I smiled, refusing to take the bait. Space planning is actually one of my professional specialties now. I just finished redesigning the executive floor for Stream Vision's headquarters. James perked up. "Stream Vision? Seriously, they're one of our biggest corporate clients." "That's impressive, Morgan." The genuine respect in his voice clearly irritated Amber, who quickly redirected the conversation to their upcoming charity gala. But the moment had been noted by everyone present, including James's parents, who began asking me thoughtful questions about my work throughout dinner. After dessert, James's father pulled him aside for what appeared to be a serious conversation near the bar cart. Amber fluttered between guests, but I noticed her watching them with barely concealed anxiety. When James returned, his expression was troubled. "Everything okay?" I asked, when we briefly found ourselves alone in the kitchen. James hesitated. "Just business stuff. Dad's considering some changes to the company structure." He studied me for a moment. "You know, Amber talks about you more than you might think." All good things, I'm sure, I said dryly. Actually, yes. Despite what you might believe, he seemed about to say more when Amber appeared at his elbow, her hand possessively gripping his arm. Private conversation, she asked, her tone light but her eyes sharp. Just getting to know my sister-in-law's sister, James replied easily. Morgan was telling me about her work with Stream Vision. Was she? How fascinating. Amber's voice suggested it was anything but. Darling, your mother is asking about the summer house plans. As they walked away, I noticed something odd, the tension in James's shoulders, the slight resistance before he allowed Amber to guide him. It was subtle, but to someone who had spent a lifetime observing people's genuine reactions beneath social veneers, it spoke volumes. Later that evening, as Alex and I were leaving, I overheard a snippet of conversation from the study where James and his father had retreated. Can't ignore the discrepancies anymore, son. The company audit, I know, Dad. I'll handle it. She doesn't. The door closed, cutting off the rest of the exchange, but the gravity in their voices lingered in my mind. Back at Alex's apartment, I mentioned what I'd overheard. Yeah, there's something going on with the company, he confirmed, looking troubled. Dad's been reviewing everything since he's planning to step down next year. James was supposed to take over, but he trailed off. But what? Alex hesitated. It's probably nothing. Just some accounting irregularities that came up during the audit. James seemed pretty shocked about it. Does it have something to do with Amber? I asked, thinking of her tense monitoring of their conversation. I don't know. Maybe. She did work in their marketing department briefly before they got engaged. He shrugged. Corporate stuff. Boring. But I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening was far from boring, and that somehow it connected to the carefully maintained image Amber had cultivated her entire life. The next morning, leaving Alex's apartment to grab coffee, I literally bumped into James on the sidewalk. Morgan, he seemed startled, then oddly relieved. I was actually hoping to run into you before you headed back to LA. Is everything okay? I asked, noting the dark circles under his eyes. Can we grab a coffee? There's something I need to ask you. Over cappuccinos at a quiet corner cafe, James got straight to the point. How well do you really know your sister Morgan? The question hung between us, loaded, complex, and surprising, coming from Amber's husband of barely 3 months. I thought I did, I answered carefully. But we've grown apart over the years. James nodded, staring into his coffee. Did you know she worked at Meridian Partners before joining our company? The investment firm? No, I thought her first job was at Baker Marketing. That's what she told everyone. That's what her resume said. James looked up, his expression troubled. Morgan, I need to know, has Amber ever mentioned someone named Thomas Garrett to you? The name meant nothing to me, but the intensity of James's question sent a chill through me. Whatever was happening, it was serious enough to put that look of barely controlled panic in the eyes of a man who had everything. I've never heard that name, I said honestly. James, what's going on? He shook his head. I can't. I need to verify some things first. But Morgan, if Amber contacts you about any documents or mentions Meridian Partners or asks anything unusual about my family's business, will you let me know? I agreed, though confusion and concern battled within me. As James left, he paused. She always described you as the quiet, reliable one. I think she meant it as a criticism, but right now, those sound like the most valuable qualities a person could have. That cryptic exchange was the beginning of the unraveling that would eventually expose the true nature of the sister I thought I knew, and force me to make a choice between family loyalty and something much more fundamental, the truth. 2 weeks after returning to Los Angeles, I received a call from a Boston number I didn't recognize. When I answered, the man identified himself as Detective Robert Morales with the Financial Crimes Division. He wanted to ask me some questions about Amber. My stomach dropped as he explained they were investigating a series of sophisticated frauds involving falsified marketing data and embezzlement at multiple companies, including Meridian Partners and Sutton Hotel Group. I haven't been close with my sister in years, I told him honestly. I don't know anything about her professional life. That's what most people say, he replied, his tone suggesting he'd heard this before. But sometimes family members notice patterns without realizing their significance. Has Amber ever lived beyond what you'd expect given her stated income? The question triggered a cascade of memories: Amber's designer wardrobe during her entry-level jobs, the luxury apartment she somehow afforded in Boston's most exclusive neighborhood, the lavish vacations when she was supposedly just starting out. I had always assumed our parents were subsidizing her lifestyle as they'd done throughout our childhood. I really wouldn't know what's appropriate for her position, I hedged. Miss Williams, let me be clear, you're not under investigation. But your sister is potentially facing serious charges. If you know anything that might help us understand the full scope of the situation, now would be the time to share it. I promised to call if I thought of anything relevant, then immediately called Alex. He confirmed what I'd begun to suspect: the accounting irregularities were actually missing funds nearly $2 million, and all evidence pointed to Amber. James is devastated, Alex said quietly. He had no idea. Apparently, she had access to accounts she shouldn't have through some credentials she obtained while briefly working in their finance department. She told everyone she was working in marketing. That doesn't make sense, I argued. Amber married into wealth. Why would she steal from her husband's family? The timeline is important. This started before she even met James. The investigators think she specifically targeted Sutton Hotel Group. Getting hired there, getting close to James. It might have all been part of her plan. The suggestion was so outlandish, so contrary to the image of my superficial but essentially conventional sister that I couldn't process it. No, there has to be some explanation. Morgan. Alex hesitated. There's more. They found evidence that this isn't the first time. There was a similar pattern at Meridian Partners, where she worked under a slightly different name, and before that at a firm in New York. My world tilted on its axis. What are you saying? The investigators think Amber Williams might not be her only identity. I hung up and sat in stunned silence, trying to reconcile the sister I knew, vain, self-centered, but familiar with this stranger Alex was describing. It couldn't be true. There had to be a mistake. My phone rang again, Amber, this time. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Morgan, thank God, she said when I picked up. Her voice had a breathless quality I'd never heard before. I need your help. James and his family, they're trying to frame me for something I didn't do. What are you talking about? They've been embezzling from their company for years, and now that they're being investigated, they're trying to pin it all on me. She sounded genuinely frightened. You know how these powerful families operate, they protect their own. I'm just the convenient scapegoat. For a moment, I wavered. This explanation aligned with the world as I understood it, the privileged protecting themselves at the expense of others. And despite everything, she was my sister. What do you need from me? I asked cautiously. I need access to Mom and Dad's safe deposit box. There are some papers, documents, from my original job offers that prove when and where I was working. They'll establish that I couldn't have done what they're accusing me of. The request seemed reasonable enough, but something felt off. Why don't you ask them yourself? They're not answering my calls, she said, her voice cracking. I think James's family has gotten to them somehow. But they'll listen to you, Morgan. You're the sensible one, remember? They've always trusted your judgment. The irony of her using the very qualities she'd previously dismissed as strengths wasn't lost on me. But more alarming was the revelation that our parents weren't answering her calls. In all our lives, I had never known them to sideline Amber's needs. Let me talk to Mom and Dad first, I said. No, the sharpness in her voice startled me. Just get the documents. I'll explain everything after. I don't have much time, Morgan. They're coming for me. After we hung up, I immediately called our parents, half expecting them not to answer my call either. But my mother picked up on the second ring. Morgan, is everything okay? The tension in her voice was immediate. Mom, what's going on with Amber? She just called me with a crazy story about the Suttons framing her for embezzlement. A heavy silence fell before my mother responded. We were hoping to protect you from this, but I suppose that's no longer possible. She sounded older, suddenly depleted. The police came to see us yesterday with evidence, photos, documents. Morgan, it's bad. What kind of evidence? Multiple identities, bank accounts we never knew about. They showed us surveillance photos of Amber, except they say her real name is Catherine Mills, at banks in 3 different states withdrawing large sums of money. They say she's done this before, many times. The room seemed to spin around me. That's impossible. We thought so too. My mother's voice broke. But then they showed us something from before. From when she was first. When we first got her. When you first got her, what does that mean? Another long pause. Morgan, there's something we've never told you. Something we thought was best kept in the past. Amber isn't. She isn't biologically our daughter. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. What? We adopted her when she was 13, almost 14. You were 10. Don't you remember that year we suddenly moved from Chicago to Boston? It was to give her a fresh start. Memories flooded back, fragmented, confusing. I had been told we moved for my father's job. I remembered Amber being presented as my older sister who had been away at boarding school. I remembered being told to make her feel welcome, to never mention certain topics around her. Why wouldn't you tell me this? Why keep it secret all these years? Her background was troubled. Foster home, some juvenile issues. The adoption agency advised us to give her a completely fresh start, including a new identity. It was all legal, my mother hastened to add. But they suggested minimizing the disruption by integrating her as if she'd always been part of the family. You were so young and you accepted it so readily. So my entire childhood, our entire family dynamic was built on a lie. I couldn't process the implications fast enough. We thought we were helping her. And you. We wanted to protect you both. Protect me by making me feel less than for my entire childhood, by constantly comparing me to her. That was never our intention, my mother said weakly. We were trying to build her confidence to make up for everything she'd lost. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. The parents I had resented for their favoritism had been overcompensating, trying to heal wounds I knew nothing about. The sister I had envied and resented wasn't my sister at all, but a stranger who had been given preference in my own home. Does she know that you know about the investigation? Yes, my mother admitted. She called yesterday asking for money to flee the country. Your father refused. It was the first time he's ever denied her anything. I thought of Amber Catherine calling me immediately after being refused by our parents. I was her backup plan. Perhaps I always had been. Morgan, my mother said urgently, the police think she might try to contact you. If she does, you need to tell them. This isn't some misunderstanding. The detective said she's wanted in connection with over $4 million in frauds across multiple states. Hey everyone, can you believe where this story is going? I'm as shocked as you probably are right now. If you're feeling the tension building just like I am, take a quick second to hit that like button. I'd love to know what you think is going to happen next. Is Amber, Catherine going to get away with everything, or is justice finally catching up to her? Drop your predictions in the comments below. Now let's get back to this family bombshell that's about to explode. As I hung up, my phone immediately lit up with a text from Amber. "Well, are you going to help your sister or not?" In that moment, looking at those words, "your sister," I realized I was standing at a crossroads. The path I chose next would define not just my relationship with Amber, but my understanding of my entire past and the person I had become because of it. The truths I had just learned were reshaping my reality in real time. My childhood insecurities, the family dynamic I had accepted as natural law, the belief that I was somehow inherently less worthy than Amber, all of it had been built on a fabrication so complete that even my parents had eventually come to believe it. I texted Amber back, "I need time to think." Her response was immediate and chilling. "There is no time. Either you help me now or I'll tell the Suttons about your involvement." My involvement? I haven't done anything. Haven't you? Who do you think processed some of those marketing reports during your internship at StreamVision? Those beautiful designs you created contained data tables that moved a lot of money, Morgan. Your fingerprints are all over this. I made sure of it. I spread through my veins as I realized the implication. 2 years ago, Amber had connected me with what I thought was a freelance opportunity at StreamVision, a company that I now realized had ties to Sutton Hotel Group. I had designed infographics and reports containing data Amber provided, data that could have been manipulated to facilitate her fraud. Had she been setting me up as a potential fall person even then, planning years ahead, weaving me into her schemes as unwitting insurance, the Morgan of before the insecure little sister, desperate for crumbs of Amber's approval, might have been paralyzed by this threat. But I wasn't that person anymore. I called Detective Morales and told him everything. The next 72 hours unfolded like scenes from a thriller I wanted no part in. Detective Morales arranged for me to continue communication with Amber while they traced her location. I discovered that aspects of my design work had indeed been used to launder money through falsified marketing reports, my legitimate graphics providing cover for manipulated financial data I had no access to or understanding of at the time. "We don't consider you complicit," Morales assured me. "You're a victim in this too. But we need your help to find her before she disappears again." I agreed to meet Amber at a hotel in San Diego close enough to the Mexican border for her planned escape yet still on U.S. soil where the authorities could intervene. The plan was simple. I would bring the documents she'd requested from our parents' safe deposit box, actually carefully prepared replicas provided by the Financial Crimes Unit, meet her as requested, and keep her talking until law enforcement could move in. What wasn't simple was the tornado of emotions raging inside me. Every memory of my childhood was being re-examined through this new lens of knowledge. The sister who had tormented me with her perfection, who had excluded me from her wedding party for not being pretty enough, who had shaped so much of my self-perception, she wasn't even my sister. She was a stranger who had been playing a role all along, using my family as both cover and resource for her true activities. Yet some small part of me still hoped for an explanation that would make sense of it all, that would allow me to preserve some version of the family I thought I had. My parents called the night before the meeting, their voices heavy with a guilt I was only beginning to understand. "We thought we were doing the right thing," my father said. "The adoption agency advised us not to tell you. They said it would help her integrate better if there was no distinction made between you. So instead, you made every distinction in her favor." I replied, the bitterness I'd suppressed for years finally finding voice. "You gave her everything, attention, resources, praise, while I was left wondering why I was never good enough." "Oh, Morgan." My mother's voice broke. "We were so afraid of making her feel unwanted again that we overcompensated. We never realized how it was affecting you. You always seemed so capable, so self-sufficient." Because I had to be, I learned early that my needs came second always. The painful truth hung between us in trying to heal one child they had inadvertently wounded another. We can't change the past, my father finally said. But please be careful tomorrow. The detective says she's dangerous, desperate people often are. The San Diego hotel lobby was an oasis of climate-controlled calm, incongruous with the tension coiling within me. I sat in a plush armchair facing the entrance, the manila envelope of fake documents on the table beside my untouched coffee. Detective Morales and his team were positioned throughout the hotel, at the bar in the business center, posing as hotel staff. They had assured me I was never out of their sight. When Amber finally entered, I barely recognized her. Gone was the polished perfection she had cultivated for as long as I could remember. Her hair was darker, pulled back severely. She wore nondescript clothing that seemed designed to avoid attention, the antithesis of her usual style. But most striking was the wary calculation in her eyes as they darted around the lobby before settling on me. "You came?" She slid into the seat across from me, her movements quick and efficient. No hug, no pretense of sisterly affection. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "Honestly, I wasn't sure." "You've grown. Less predictable." She nodded at the envelope. "You have what I asked for." I pushed it toward her. "Everything from the safe deposit box. Now, tell me what's really going on, Amber. Or should I call you Catherine?" Her eyes snapped to mine, narrowing slightly. "So, they told you?" "About the adoption, yes. Though they left out the part about you being a serial fraudster." A strange smile touched her lips. "Is that what they said? That they adopted me? How charitable of them to remember it that way." "What do you mean?" "Your parents didn't rescue me from some tragic past, Morgan. They bought me. I was a transaction, a replacement for their actual daughter who died." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What are you talking about? You had a biological sister named Amber. She died when you were 3, a car accident. You were too young to remember, but it destroyed your mother. When the grief counseling and medication didn't work, your father found an alternative solution, me." Her voice was clinically detached. "I was 13 in foster care after running away from my 4th placement. Your father worked with a lawyer who specialized in private adoptions for wealthy families who didn't want to wait for the system. Except it wasn't really an adoption. The paperwork was falsified. I was given your dead sister's identity." My mind reeled, struggling to process this revelation. "That's not possible." "There would be records, questions. Money answers a lot of questions, Morgan. Your father paid off my foster family and the administrators. The lawyer handled the documentation. Your mother got a replacement daughter who looked enough like the original to ease her grief. Everyone got what they wanted." She leaned forward. "Except me. I got a life sentence of pretending to be someone else, of meeting impossible expectations based on the ghost of a perfect daughter." "You're lying," I whispered, though something deep within me recognized the ring of truth in her words. "Am I? Ask yourself why they favored me so blatantly. It wasn't love, it was guilt and obligation. They needed me to be their dead daughter. My actual identity, my past, my trauma, none of that mattered as long as I played my role." Her bitter laugh held no humor. "The irony is, I excelled at it. I became everything they wanted Amber to be: beautiful, accomplished, socially connected. I gave them the perfect daughter to display to the world while they ignored you, the living reminder of what they'd lost." Each word was a revelation that restructured my understanding of my life. If what she was saying was true, my parents' favoritism hadn't been about loving her more, it had been about an impossible attempt to resurrect their lost child through a surrogate. So, yes, I took advantage of opportunities. I created new identities because that's what they taught me to do. I took money from companies because I was treated like a commodity first. She was opening the envelope, flipping through the documents. "The Suttons are no different. Old money built on exploiting others, maintaining their position through connections and corruption. That doesn't justify what you did, I said, finding my voice. No, her eyes met mine challenging. Their precious hotel empire was built on laundered money and tax evasion. I just redirected some of it. James knew not everything, but enough. He looked the other way until his father started asking questions. Now suddenly he's shocked and betrayed. She snorted. Please. And what about me? Why involve me in your schemes? Why threaten me? For the first time, something like regret flickered across her features. You were insurance. A contingency plan. I never thought I'd need to use it. You used me my entire life, I said quietly. First as your shadow to shine against, then as your unwitting accomplice. She shrugged, the momentary vulnerability gone. We used the tools available to us. You had a real family, a real identity. I had to create mine. She stood suddenly, tucking the envelope into her bag. This isn't going to help as much as I hoped, but it's something. I need to go. Amber, wait. I rose too, panic surging as I realized she was about to walk away before Morales could move in. The police know everything. They're here. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. Of course they are. And you led them right to me. She nodded slightly as if confirming something to herself. The quiet, reliable sister finally stands up for herself. I should be proud. It doesn't have to end this way. If you cooperate, explain how you were coerced, save your concern. She cut me off. This isn't my first reinvention and it won't be my last. Goodbye, Morgan. For what it's worth, I am sorry not for what I did, but for how it affected you. You deserved better parents than the ones who used us both. Before I could respond, she was moving toward the lobby doors. I saw Detective Morales emerge from the bar area, other officers converging. Amber saw them too. For a suspended moment, I thought she might run, but instead she straightened her shoulders and walked directly toward Morales, her hands raised in a gesture of surrender that somehow still conveyed dignity. As they led her away, she didn't look back at me once. The months following Amber's arrest unfolded in a blur of legal proceedings, family therapy sessions, and painful revelations. Much of what she had told me proved true, confirmed by old records my father eventually produced and by the testimony of the lawyer who had facilitated the illegal adoption. My parents faced their own legal consequences, not prison, but substantial fines and community service for falsifying adoption records and tax documents related to the transaction. The media coverage was intense but mercifully brief. The story of a con woman who had infiltrated Boston high society was quickly replaced by newer scandals. The Sutton family, eager to distance themselves from the embarrassment, reached a private settlement with all affected parties and quietly replaced their entire financial management team. James filed for annulment rather than divorce on the grounds that he had married someone who didn't legally exist. I met with him once during this period, a strained coffee meeting where he seemed simultaneously angry and lost. "Did you know?" he asked directly. "Any of it?" "No," I answered honestly. "I knew she was favored, spoiled even. I never imagined anything like this." He nodded, stirring his coffee absently. "I loved someone who never existed." How do you reconcile that? I had no answer for him. I was struggling with the same question. Alex remained a steady presence through all of it, flying to LA on weekends, calling daily, listening to my processing without judgment. When I expressed guilt over finding happiness while my family was imploding, he pointed out a truth I needed to hear. Your family imploded decades ago, Morgan. You're just seeing the pieces clearly for the first time. My parents and I established a fragile new relationship, one based on painful honesty rather than comfortable fictions. The process was excruciating but necessary, forcing us to confront not just the lies about Amber, but the dynamics that had shaped my entire childhood. "We thought we were protecting you," my mother explained, during one particularly difficult therapy session. You were so young when your sister died. The therapist said children your age often don't form concrete memories of trauma. So, you replaced her and never told me. The hurt still felt fresh each time we discussed it. We convinced ourselves it was best for everyone, my father admitted. The longer we maintained the fiction, the harder it became to imagine telling the truth. And then? And then you started treating her like she was actually your favored child. I finished for him. Do you have any idea what that did to me? They didn't, not really. They were only beginning to understand the impact of their choices, how their desperate attempt to replace one daughter had damaged their relationship with the other. 6 months after the arrest, I visited Amber Catherine in the medium security facility where she was being held during trial proceedings. She seemed smaller, somehow stripped of the trappings of wealth and status she had accumulated, yet strangely more authentic than I had ever seen her. I didn't think you'd come, she said as we sat across from each other in the visiting room. Neither did I admitted. But I have questions only you can answer. She tilted her head, considering me. You look different. Stronger. I feel different. Finding out your entire childhood was based on lies will do that. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Truth is liberating, isn't it? Even when it's ugly. Was any of it real? I asked the question that had haunted me. Any moment between us as sisters, was that ever genuine? She considered this carefully before answering. Not at first. You were just part of the role I had to play. But later, there were moments. When you graduated college. When you won that first design award. I was actually proud of you, though. I couldn't show it without breaking character. Breaking character, I repeated. That's how you saw your life with us. As a performance, what else could it be? I was living someone else's life, fulfilling someone else's destiny. Your parents didn't want Catherine Mills' troubled foster kid. They wanted their perfect Amber back, so that's who I became. And the cons, the stolen money, she shrugged. That started before your family. Survival skills from the system. With your parents, I saw an opportunity for stability, education, connections. I used those advantages to build my own safety net. Trust me, if your parents had actually loved me for myself, things might have been different. I wasn't sure I believed her, but I understood the twisted logic. In her mind, she had been exploited first, which justified her subsequent exploitation of others, including me. Did you ever care about me at all? The question emerged unbidden, the voice of the little sister still seeking validation. Catherine's expression softened fractionally. You were the only authentic person in that house, Morgan. You didn't know you were playing a role in someone else's psychodrama. I envied that about you. And yes, sometimes I cared. Not enough to change my plans, but enough to feel occasional regret about how they affected you. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was probably the most honest one she had ever given me. As I rose to leave, she called after me. They're going to ask you to testify, you know. About your involvement in the Stream Vision documents. I turned back. I know. I'm going to tell the truth. That's what scares them. Her smile was knowing. The truth is more damaging than any lie I ever told. She was right. My testimony about my unwitting role in her fraud exposed not just Catherine's crimes, but the systemic failures and corrupt practices that had enabled them, from the illegal adoption facilitated by professionals who should have known better to the financial oversight gaps at prestigious firms, to the willful blindness of Boston society toward a newcomer with a suspiciously perfect pedigree. Catherine eventually accepted a plea deal, 15 years with possibility of parole after 8, in exchange for information about other financial crimes within the corporate network she had infiltrated. Her cooperation led to several high-profile arrests and regulatory reforms in the financial sector. My parents sold their Boston home and relocated to Arizona, a fresh start in late middle age. Our relationship remained complicated but was gradually becoming more honest and balanced. They would never fully understand the impact of their choices, but they were finally trying to see me as I was, not as a reminder of what they had lost. As for me, I found unexpected peace in the chaos. The revelations that had shattered my understanding of my family also freed me from the insecurities that had defined much of my life. I wasn't competing with a ghost or with a con artist's performance. I was simply myself with all my authentic strengths and flaws. My relationship with Alex deepened during this period of upheaval. He witnessed my pain, anger, and eventual healing without judgment or expectation. When he proposed a year later, it wasn't the fairy tale scenario his brother had created for Catherine Amber, but something far more valuable, a genuine commitment based on knowing and accepting each other fully. No perfect family illusions between us, he promised as he slipped the ring on my finger, just the real, sometimes messy truth. I sold my Los Angeles apartment, and we bought a home together in San Francisco, neutral territory. Far from the shadows of Boston, but close enough to the ocean to feel like a true California girl at heart. My design business thrived particularly after a feature in Architectural Digest highlighted my work on authentic spaces that tell the client's genuine story. On rare occasions, I received letters from Catherine, clinical updates on her appeal process or her involvement in financial literacy programs for the facility's inmates. I answered some, ignored others, understanding that whatever connection remained between us was neither familial nor friendship, but something undefined that acknowledged our shared history without romanticizing it. The last letter I received before our parents' anniversary dinner contained a single line that stayed with me. We're both free now, just in different ways. She was right in her way. The collapse of our family facade had been painful but necessary, like setting a broken bone that had healed incorrectly. The process was excruciating, but it created the possibility for something healthier to emerge. 10 years passed. Catherine served her minimum sentence and was released on parole, dropping out of contact entirely, presumably to build yet another new identity somewhere far from her past. My parents aged into a quieter, more reflective relationship with each other and with me. Alex and I welcomed a daughter whom we named after his grandmother. No ghosts, no replacement identities, just a new person with her own authentic future ahead of her. Which brings me to that anniversary dinner where our story began the moment I sat across from Catherine, now going by Elizabeth Chen, successful financial consultant recently relocated to Boston with her new husband. She had changed her appearance again, but I recognized her instantly, not by her features but by the calculating assessment in her eyes as she registered my presence. Our parents had received an invitation from her, a carefully orchestrated reconciliation attempt that they had been too confused and hopeful to question. They didn't know I had been invited too. None of us knew why she had resurfaced after all this time, risking her parole conditions and her new identity to arrange this meeting. "Morgan," she said, her smile perfect as ever, "you look wonderful. Motherhood suits you. What are you doing here?" Elizabeth I kept my voice steady despite the shock. "Family is family," she replied smoothly. "Some bonds can't be broken no matter how hard we try." As our stunned parents entered the private dining room, I saw her mask slip for just an instant, revealing not the calculated manipulator I expected, but something more complicated. Vulnerability, longing, and beneath it all, a flicker of something that might have been genuine regret. Whatever game Catherine was playing now, it wasn't the same as before. And this time, I was entering it with open eyes, strong boundaries, and the confidence that came from knowing exactly who I was. No one's replacement, no one's shadow, just Morgan Williams, authentic and complete in herself. I watched Catherine Elizabeth now charm our aging parents with practiced ease, noting how carefully she avoided any mention of the past decade. She spoke of her financial consulting business, her new husband conveniently traveling on business, their plans to settle permanently in Boston. My parents absorbed it all with a mixture of caution and hope, desperate to believe in redemption despite everything. When they excused themselves briefly before dessert, I confronted her directly. Why are you really here? What could you possibly want after all this time? Her perfect facade slipped again, revealing something raw beneath. Believe it or not, I've spent the last decade in therapy. Turns out having your entire identity built on deception leaves some psychological scars. That doesn't answer my question. She sighed. I'm dying, Morgan. Pancreatic cancer stage 4. 6 months, maybe less. The blunt statement struck me silent. I searched her face for signs of manipulation, but found only exhaustion beneath the careful makeup. This isn't about money or forgiveness or some elaborate con, she continued. It's about facing the truth before I can't anymore. I've lived so many lives, been so many people. Before the end, I needed to sit with the people who knew me longest, even if what they knew was only a fraction of who I was. I didn't know whether to believe her. Catherine, Amber, Elizabeth, whoever she really was, had built her entire existence on calculated lies. Yet there was something different in her demeanor, now a weight of authenticity I'd never sensed before. Does your new husband know about your past? A smile touched her lips. Everything. He's the first person I've ever been completely honest with. It's terrifying and freeing at the same time. Our parents returned before I could respond. As we finished the meal with polite conversation that carefully avoided the deeper currents beneath, I observed the woman who had been presented as my sister for most of my life. Despite everything she had done, despite the damage her presence in our family had caused, I felt an unexpected twinge of compassion. She had been a child used as a replacement, molded to fulfill others' needs while her own were ignored. The path she chose in response had been destructive and criminal, but perhaps not incomprehensible. As we parted outside the restaurant, she pressed a small envelope into my hand. I don't expect forgiveness, Morgan, but I hope someday you'll understand that in my own broken way, I did care about you. The envelope contained a key and an address to a storage unit where I later discovered she had left extensive records of her entire history. Foster care documentation, the illegal adoption papers, journals spanning decades, and a detailed account of every con and identity. Alongside these were unexpected treasures, photos she had saved of me from college, graduation news clippings about my design awards, even a copy of my daughter's birth announcement from the local paper. She had been watching from afar all these years, keeping track of my life, even as she created new versions of her own. It was simultaneously disturbing and poignant, the actions of someone who had never learned how to connect normally, but had tried in the only way she knew. Catherine died 4 months later, her legal name once again Catherine Mills. In her final weeks, she cooperated with authorities to provide evidence against the remaining players in the illegal adoption scheme that had placed her with our family, leading to several long overdue arrests. My parents and I attended her small funeral, standing awkwardly among strangers who knew versions of her we had never met. Her husband, real as it turned out, spoke of a complex, brilliant woman who had found peace and honesty only at the end of her life. Afterward, as I sorted through the storage unit materials for what might be needed for legal closure, I found a sealed letter addressed to me dated just days before her death. Morgan, it began, if you're reading this, I've finally run out of second chances. I've been many people in my life, but I never got to be myself until it was too late. Don't make my mistake. Be Morgan, not someone's sister or daughter or even wife, just authentically yourself. It's the only thing I never managed to counterfeit successfully, and the only thing that matters in the end. As I stood there holding the final communication from the woman who had been forced into my sister's identity, I realized something profound. The greatest gift Catherine had unknowingly given me was the opportunity to define myself. outside of the false narrative our family had constructed. While she had been trapped in a role not of her choosing, I had eventually found my way to authenticity, painful as the journey had been. The family we thought we were never existed. The perfect daughter, the lesser sister, the devoted parents, all were constructs designed to mask truths too painful to acknowledge. But from those ashes, something real had emerged, imperfect people capable of growth, honesty, and genuine connection. I keep Catherine's letter in my desk drawer, now a reminder that the most elaborate facades eventually crumble, revealing the truth beneath, and that sometimes the greatest freedom comes from letting them fall. What's your story? Have you ever experienced a family secret that changed everything when revealed? Or have you had to confront a painful truth about someone close to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. This journey taught me that authenticity, however difficult, is always worth fighting for. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real, honest conversations about family dynamics and personal growth. And don't forget to share with anyone who might need to hear that it's never too late to embrace your authentic self. Thank you for being here with me. I'm grateful for each one of you who took the time to listen to my family's complicated journey to truth.